Welcome to the D&D Fitness Radio Podcast, brought to you by your hosts, Don Saladino from New York City and Derek Hansen from Vancouver, Canada.
Interesting. I mean, Brandon, I feel like the wearable market is getting even more I don't want to say out of control as if it's a bad thing, but there's so much. I mean, years ago, people were a little unsure on what it is and what it's doing. And now you're really, seeing, I don't want to say people drinking the Kool-Aid, but people are wearing these wearables now, and they are looking at the data. What have you found since we had our last conversation? Have you seen a lot of improvement in that space?
No. It's certain wearables or certain companies have made improvements in their technology. Other companies have just made improvements in their marketing.
Right.
And that's the big thing, right? Yeah.
And can you jump, Derek, not to interrupt, but I kind of jumped ahead for our people who are listening. I mean, Brandon Marcello is like, he's a legend in the fitness and wellness space. I mean, unbelievable. A fellow Italian, met him at the Perform Better. Did I meet him through you, Derek, first, or Perform Better? I think I may have met.
Probably Perform Better. Yeah.
We actually met. We knew of each other, but we met at through Garden of Life, right? You were.
Yes.
Where was that? Was that an NSCA? Was that a?
Might have been. There was an NSCA in Vegas.
Or was it
Florida?
Ursa? No, it wasn't Ursa.
It wasn't Ursa.
Anyway,
we probably met at GOL, and I remember. So, Brandon, can you explain what it is you do? I mean, I want us to fill everyone in technically. No, I mean you are a world-renowned sleep recovery expert is how I would normally describe you. But can you give a little background?
Yeah. So the short version, I solve human performance problems. Short version. Who do I do that for? Sports teams, athletes, business organizations, U.S. military, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Background, strength coach right out of the box, right? So strength coach back in the day at IMG Academies. Then I helped stand up a little company called Athletes Performance back in the day when it was just two of us. And then moved on to get a PhD because I just wanted to inflict more pain upon myself. And then was director of performance at Stanford. That's where I met Derek. He came by for a visit, and I've actually knew of him, right? And so come on down. And then, off then 7 years there, now doing my own thing. And so here we are.
Haven't looked back.
I don't look back.
So now it's private consulting for these teams. You're like the big gun that they hire to bring in to say, hey, listen, look this over for us. How do we improve performance overall? Or our team these guys are dragging ass when it comes to rest and recovery. You pretty much go in and you dissect.
Could be that.
Organizations.
What do we do well? What do we not do well? What do we, can you do an audit for us? Can you figure out how we can travel better? Can you figure out how's our staff? Do we need better staff? Do we need better staff education?
Oh, that's an interesting way of putting it. So you pretty much go in and you audit. You pretty much assess an organization, and you're like, you're weak in these areas. These are the areas that
here's what you do well.
Right.
Okay. And here's what you don't do well. And here are some strategies to course correct. Take them or leave them.
So you're not always going in and you're not always the one to actually solve the problem when you figure it out. You might say, no, this person is the best in that field, or let's bring this individual in, right? So you're like a connector.
I have been brought in to sports teams as an interviewee for a position, but I was just evaluating their interview process and not even applying for the job.
That's remarkable. I love
right.
that.
So it's kind of like there's all these different aspects of performance, and again, it's solving a problem. So it could be as high level as how do we better evaluate warfighters, or it could be how's our interview process, all the way down to how do we communicate better with our athletes, right? Regarding
Now,
supplements or whatever.
does it take a certain type of organization to bring you in and actually do that and go like, do they have to have a little bit of thick skin and security about themselves? Like, hey, come in and tell us everything that's wrong with us. Don't pull any punches. Like, do you find that there's an association between that willingness and how much they can improve?
It depends on the scope of the problem, but yes. So sometimes it's like the strength coach might reach out to me and say, hey, we need help. Can you do a nutrition audit? And then I'll probably get pushback from, this always happens. Like, what's going to happen. The chef starts asking questions. Why are we bringing this guy in? What is he going to do? Why does he want to talk to me? What is he asking questions about? Are they just trying to go with somebody else and they need an excuse, right? It's like, dude, I just want to know what you're making, right? Give me your list of ingredients. Where do you come up with your stuff? That's all.
You're like Gordon Ramsay.
Yeah, you're right. I'm just like, I'm coming in to provide insight. So I have a conversation with you so I can ask questions, and, and I ask the cook the same thing, right? What are your barriers to performance, right? Maybe it's like, well, they don't pay me enough. Great. I'll put it down. Right. But, I'm not negotiating those things. I just need to know what is preventing you from making a really good, high quality meal that tastes good on a consistent basis for guys.
Do you ever have individuals approach you, individual athletes, and say, listen, I need you to go and overlook my lifestyle training. Where are there gaps that I need to fill?
Yes. And then I also have athletes who kind of keep me on retainer to say, hey, Brandon, the guys in the clubhouse were talking about this wearable. What do you think? Or what about this recovery modality? What do you think? Or, hey, I'm going to Kansas City this week. Do you know a good massage therapist that I could pull in? Or, hey, I need a new trainer. My guy I'm getting rid of, who can you handle the hiring process for me? Or can you narrow it down to 3 people and then I'll take care of the rest? So yeah, all those things.
I love that.
It's fun.
Cool.
It's fun.
It is fun.
Yeah.
When it comes to the wearable market, and we're going to get back into this, you talked about the marketing piece, and it seems like the investors are really feeding that more so than the technology development. The technology has been developed. Now let's get some really heavy hitters in here to give us some money so that we can market the crap out of this. And I'm even seeing that with, like, I'm following cryptocurrency going, what the hell is going on? What is an NFT, right? And you can see how they're manipulating the market too and getting people into a frenzy. Do you find that that's a problem when you're trying to really evaluate these things for people and point them in the right direction?
It's a problem when people have invested in the product. That can be a problem. If a team has invested in a product, nobody likes to be wrong, right? Being wrong is okay. It doesn't make you a bad human being. It doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't make you unintelligent. It just means, you've been duped by marketing, right? That happens all the time. And that's not anyone's fault. That's just what happens, right? It happens when you buy a car. It happens when you purchase cereal at a grocery store, right? It happens everywhere. There's always marketing, right? For instance, there are 3,000 messages. Women are exposed to 3,000 messages a day that are geared to make them hate their bodies subconsciously. You don't realize it. It's like, oh, there's 1, there's 2, right? But these are the battles we're fighting. We don't have a good counterattack for those. So, like, we talked about nutrition. Like, one of the things that I've recommended in the past was, like, you don't need to hire another nutritionist. What you need to hire is a marketing person, because that's what you're fighting, right? It's like, nobody is reading as much as I appreciate you putting, like, the little tabletop thing right next to the napkin holder that talks about the importance of hydration, right? It's made by a dietitian who has 0 background in marketing. Why are you making signs? Right? Give your signs to a marketing person. That's what they do, right? We're fighting a marketing battle. We're not fighting a nutrition battle, So if we can join forces with like a dietitian and a good marketing person, now we're bringing we're not bringing the knife to the gunfight anymore, right?
I find that being a very common problem, though, that what you're chiming in on is I think a lot of professionals, no matter what their industry is they try and wear too many hats and they sit there and they waste time. They do. It's like you're in the fitness business, you're a trainer, you're launching a club and you're working on sales. Like you don't know shit about sales. Well, I don't want to spend money on it. I was like, okay, then waste 3 years not building your sales where it's going to cost you time and money. Right? How often do you find that you are approaching that issue?
All the time, right? You see it and Derek, you've seen this, right? Ad nauseum, right? Your strength guy, you have a strength staff that's already overworked and they're like, well, we need a data scientist. Who got the best grade? Who took stats? I did. You're our data scientist, right? Who's going to be our sports scientist? Who got the best grades in X Phys? Oh, I got a B+. You're our sports science guy, right? It's like, that's kind of what it is. And you're also running the maintenance of the weight room, right? So you're changing out light bulbs, you're fixing equipment, it's crazy. So now you're not even able to be good at what you're good at, right? You're doing 6 jobs, all of them terrible. And I'm sure there's a need for that, right? Early on, like if you're starting your own business, I get it. You got, early days of athletes performance. Yes, we are cleaning the facility, right? We didn't have the budget to do that. So we had to clean it. I get it. But, we're also smart enough to know when we had the funds, let's stop doing this, right? Because we're not experts and I'm not going to be an expert. So I could research it, but what's one night of researching going to do for me, right? On anything. So.
I got a quick question. So Derek started shifting into wearables, which, I don't know how sensitive you have to be when discussing this topic. I mean, naturally, I don't know if it's something where you can expose any information or we have to be careful. I'll respect whatever of speed you want to go at. But it seems like a lot of professional athletes out there are putting a lot more value into these wearables that, maybe goes around your wrist, right? And we're finding
but is that because they're paid to do it or because they're actually interested, Don?
I don't know. I really don't. I really don't know. I can't start mentioning names of people that I know who wear them, but I mean, I wear the Oura Ring. It's not on right now because it's charging, but I happen to wear the Oura Ring and I really use the data for one thing and one thing only, and that's my sleep. And, do I think it's 100% accurate? I don't think it's 100% accurate, but I do see trends from night to night according to activity or maybe how much, screen time I'm spending or diet, especially my nutrition. I'm really dialed in on. So I know when I manipulate certain things with nutrition or supplementation, I might see a little bit of, volatility in there, but I also sleep with 2 of my dogs and my wife. So it's like, does that have something to do with it? So, I'm still like, I believe in it. I believe that it can help, but I also understand that it's not perfect. But for a professional athlete out there that's looking for optimization, I'm not talking about the average everyday Joe who's like, oh, I wear a Whoop because it keeps me from having that second cocktail every night. I'm like, fantastic. But it's not a high performance product. You can't say it's a high performance product yet. Do you agree or disagree with that?
I agree 100%. I think at the end of the day, wearables do one thing, behavior change. That's it, right? That's all that they do is they create behavior change.
I like that.
Some do it better than others. Some don't do it very well at all. But I would agree with your point. You wear Oura, you wear Whoop, you wear Fitbit, you wear Apple Watch, you wear what make up the wearable, right? You're going to see that. I think that's a good thing because people want insights into themselves. How can I be a better sleeper? Or how do I sleep? What is my heart rate throughout the night? What is my respiratory rate? What is my temperature? What is my HRV, right? Whatever those numbers are that may or may not be accurate, right? Let's push the accuracy aside. It's great that people care about sleep and recovery enough that they want to look into these things, right? And I think that's a win for people paying attention to themselves. But these are consumer wearables, And like you said, it's not going to be 100% correct because they don't want to put the research dollars into it because it's a consumer off the shelf product or a COTS product. Medical devices, you want a lot less error, right? Understandable, right? You don't want to go in and, it's plus or minus, your blood pressure is, 130 over 96 plus or minus 20. What? Right? You don't want that. You don't want the ultrasound to have a large margin of error. It's all about error budget. And wearing a particular wearable with a large amount of error isn't a bad thing as long as you're aware and willing to accept that error. But if you hold that, whatever that device is telling you as truth, that's where I think you're going to be led astray. And I think that's kind of the danger, is that we rely upon the wearable to tell us how we should be feeling. And Derek, you've felt this. Don, I'm sure you felt this. I know I feel it. I get up in the morning, I look at my Aura data, for instance, and it says one thing, I feel another. Okay. That's called device agreement. I'm not in agreement with my device. Some days my device says I should feel great and I feel like crap. Some days I feel great, my device says I should feel like crap. There's a disagreement there. Okay. So I'm going to defer to myself on those things, as opposed to saying, geez, I feel great, but you know what? Maybe I do feel crappy. Right. And that's the other thing too. So you have to understand it's the error that you have to understand and that you're accepting and taking on when wearing these wearables. It's like body composition, right? Do I want a DEXA scan? Do I want skin fold calipers by somebody who's done it? Never. Do I want an expert with skin fold calipers? Do I want measurements around my neck and, all those, the girth measurements? Or do I want somebody to guess? They're all right. They're just all different way, assuming greater and smaller amounts of error, depending on which one you choose.
You know what the most interesting technology margin of error device in the last year I've seen is the infrared temperature monitor, right? And so you'll go somewhere and then they bought it at Home Depot and it's like, yes, this is your temperature. And I think the margin of error is like 10 degrees either way or something, right?
Right.
And that was a huge one where you're like, this is all for show. This is all for perception. It has nothing to do with accuracy or health or anything like that.
It's funny. I won't even look at that data before a workout anymore, because like this morning, I woke up, I felt like I had a great night's sleep. I felt great. I was on a time crunch. I had an early call. I had to be at the gym. I had to go get I got my second vaccine shot today. So I was on like a specific time crunch. And
you got the one with the microchip.
Yeah, exactly. The wearable.
Yes, yes.
But I remember waking up being like, I'm not checking this right now. I feel good. I don't want to see it. I look at it mainly to see if I can improve sleep quality. If I look at it and I see my sleep quality was high, I start assessing my, before bedtime ritual. Oh, I did some more breathing. I did some more, like Derek got me onto some hamstring stretching, some light stretching before bed. Oh, I didn't do it. I did it. Oh, I supplemented magnesium last night. I didn't. I had a high carb meal, low carb meal. That's really all I use it for. But for me to wake up in the morning and to look at a device when I'm like, I feel great, I'm working with a client or I'm going out to do a run or doing something that I truly do more for this than anything else. If it puts me into a negative state, like I don't want to be there. And that's when I started getting turned off by this, when a lot of my athletes early on, they started, even with Omega Wave, which I've used for years. I was using it all through the pandemic. Actually, Val sent me their adaptive running platform, and I trained off of that. I showed Derek for 5K training, but you get up and you get hooked up to that, and then suddenly it wasn't telling me like good or bad. It was like, all right, this was your running plan for today. And I thought that was kind of cool. Like, oh, it's more of a steady state. It's more of a recovery run. My heart rate needs to be in this range. It wasn't telling me I was all messed up. It was just telling me you could still do something, but this is what you need to do. That I kind of enjoyed, but turning around to someone saying you're in the red today when they have to go to the war room and they have to go and compete with workers or other athletes, I feel like is a weapon put in the hands of the wrong people.
100%. And I think you hit it on the head, Don, when you said this earlier, was that you look at the trends And that's what it should be is, I look at my data every morning. I find it interesting and I look at the trends of it. And I try to do what you do is unpack the context of why that number is there. Right. So like, I mean, you might look tomorrow morning after you've had your second shot, right? You may wake up and be craving to buy Microsoft products. Kidding. But I'm just throwing
With the microchip in it. It's
Microchip,
so good. You love that, don't you?
Um,
Keep it coming all day. I want to get
yeah.
into the next 40 minutes.
we're worried about putting a microchip because someone's going to follow every move that we make in life. We don't need exactly. We can already do
exactly.
it. We already do it, right?
Yeah.
But I look at the numbers and I find the numbers interesting, and to see that, right? I mean, okay, it's interesting to see the trends over time, and that's all it should be used for. And depending on the device, certain devices are better at one thing, other devices are not. I can be a little outspoken on social media. I put that post up there, which is more accurate, the Whoop or the Magic 8-Ball, right? And took a little informal poll.
Oh, I didn't see that. Can you fill us in on what that said?
Yeah, so I said, which one do you think is more accurate, the Whoop or a Magic 8-Ball? And
that's really funny.
And so
it pissed some people off. I take it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there are people that I know wear Whoop and looked at it but didn't comment, or and again, if you wear a Whoop device, it's great that you care about sleep and recovery. Okay. They have a beautiful user interface. It's very elegant. It's very clean. The way they portray data is exceptional. But in terms of the information in which it provides you from a sleep standpoint, from a sleep staging standpoint, from a sleep efficiency standpoint, from a heart rate standpoint, from an HRV standpoint, and a strain standpoint, I'm going with the Magic 8-Ball.
Right.
Because it's really just a random number generator. And, I've full disclosure, I vetted Whoop for the military. And these vetting processes aren't taken lightly. I went to their headquarters. I met with their data scientists. I collaborated with other research labs that we have in the Department of Defense and other sports teams and sports leagues that have also vetted the product. And we've all independently come back with the same answer. I think it means we're kind of, definitely all on the same page.
I had an interesting conversation with one of the major heart rate measuring companies, like one of the, let's just call it the top 3 in the world. It probably is. And they sent me a wrist watch that measures heart rate, and they sent me a chest strap. And I kind of knew I knew the answer to this. I mean, I wear, like, to measure my own heart rate, I measure first beat. I like it. I think it's interesting. It's fun. I like how I get the data reports after hockey games, after cardio. I can really start looking at aerobic versus anaerobic as I'm training. I enjoy it. And I asked this company, well, why are you sending me the chest strap and the wrist? And the guy just was I couldn't believe how honest he was. He's, oh, the chest strap's way more accurate.
Of course.
And I was like, thank you. And I'm like, is it just in your product or in all products? He goes, oh, Don, all products. He goes, the wrist wearables, they're not there yet. They can be anywhere. I think he was saying one of the best ones on the market could be anywhere from 25. I mean, what was it? Apple, something like that can be 25 to 35 beats off a minute. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but I've seen some variability on that.
Apple, first generation Apple, JAMA, Journal of American Medical Association, did a research study, and the first gen Apple Watch, 95% of the variance compared to EKG, minus 19 plus 21 beats per minute. That was first gen. Now they're in like Gen 5 now, I think, maybe.
So how much is that improved?
It's getting better because people are wearing it. Algorithms are getting better, and they're trying to move toward more medical, right?
But I mean, is it, you said 19 to what was it? 21 first gen?
21. Yeah,
okay. So I mean, is it a little better 15 to 20 now, or are we in the single digits?
I think I don't know the actual numbers from Apple now, this new gen, but if they're moving toward a medical device,
it's got to be tight.
They have to get that in tight, right? But again, the farther you go away from the heart, right, the worse the measurement's going to get. I mean, Aura does a better job because at least there's capillaries here. And you got to remember, what they're extrapolating is pulse rate, not heart rate, right? So there's a lot of algorithms on top of that. We're looking through this way. You feel your pulse on the bottom. I think it's kind of, I don't know why somebody just didn't put the sensor on the bottom of the what do you call it? the wristband, right?
Mhm.
I mean, anyway, whatever. What's done is done.
But that's a huge variability though. If you think about it, if you're off, even if right now, let's say Apple's off 10 beats.
Mhm.
Let's say right now their Gen 5 is off 10 beats.
Mhm.
That's, in my book, that's enormous. Like
It
the
depends.
difference of me being between 150 and 160, it's literally like, all right, this is the difference. I feel that difference.
And you have to remember that some of these they're better at rest. When we exercise, it tends to get a little more noisy. The air seems to grow. It's like sleep.
Because of movement, right?
Yep. Well, the
Yeah.
movement and the increase in rate of pulse and things like that, because you have to capture more. Same with sleep, right? These sleep wearables do Aura does a decent job if you're a restful sleeper. The more restless of a sleeper you are, the error tends to grow, right? So, if you are a restless sleeper and you know it, maybe you don't pay much attention to the sleep efficiency numbers, the quantity and quality, as opposed to somebody who is a known restful sleeper, right? So again, it's how much air are you comfortable with. That 10 beat per minute, you're not comfortable with that. It's great. Other people might say, I don't exercise, it's better at rest. Yeah, I'm curious, fine, good, great, right? A medical center, no, right? Not acceptable, right? Which is why they have those, EKGs. That's why they hook you up to those things, because they have very good accuracy, right? It's valid, it's accurate, it's reliable. Yeah.
Which is funny because like I think I had a 12 or it was either 3 or 12 lead EKG in my last medical appointment, and the resting rate was pretty much what my Garmin watch has been telling me, right? So it's interesting, and I think the question I have for you is, if we look where wearables are going, we're looking at Amazon, we're looking at maybe Microsoft, but all of these companies want to get into healthcare, and they want to be able to do diagnosis and prescription, because we don't want to have to go to the doctor's office. We can all do it at home now because COVID has kind of pushed us there. Have you been looking into that space and where it might be going, where a wearable might have to be now a medical grade device where we're using it as part of our healthcare?
Right. So those are two different worlds, right? Because if you have a consumer lane and then you have a medical lane, which are completely different and completely level of evaluation, marketing will tell you that their device is FDA listed or something. I don't remember what the specific term is. That doesn't mean it's been cleared by the FDA or FDA approved. That's a whole different process. It's a whole nother lane, right? So you're going to see it for sure, that some people are going to use these devices for medical things or parts of the device, right? So like Apple does a great job at being able to identify atrial fib from the wrist, but that doesn't mean they can catch VFib, Wolfe Parkinson White, or any other type of cardiac malady right from the wrist. It just means they happen to crack the code with the algorithm for AFib. So maybe they're a good job of doing that, right? So there are some specific instances when I think devices can be used, or portions of devices can be used.
Yeah, because they said the Aura, the biggest thing was the temperature, body temperature they found.
Aura kind of came very lucky that they had a thermometer built in there and they had a pandemic, right? And you just mentioned temperature, some of the predictive stuff that we've been working on with the military for COVID, right? You see like this dip in temperature before you see the spike in people that have COVID. So they were trying to say, well, can the Aura be predictive of maybe, catch COVID ahead of time? So then maybe people could self-isolate, or we could test them ahead of time before they, infect people because of that delayed lag time where they're asymptomatic and spreading. But so, the temperature checks that we do, like you mentioned, it's already a done deal by that time, right? You should be checking temperature. You should be doing smell testing, right? To be honest with you, and temperature testing. So like, hey, smell this. What is it? I don't know. I can't smell it. All right. That's a problem, right? Yeah. Yes, you need to get tested, right? So yeah, anyway, but I digress. But I forgot what we were talking about.
No, so we were on, getting back to wearables now. So you have your opinion, obviously, on Whoop. Oura Ring, fatigue science. I mean, where have all these compared in your book? How has that evolved since our last conversation? Or are you just like, it's kind of all the same. We haven't seen a huge evolution yet.
I mean, it's very much the same. So just that recap. Oura Ring, any sleep staging from the finger, from the wrist. See, this is how much REM I had. This is how much deep sleep I had. It's a leap, right? You're accepting a lot of error. Why do companies do it? Because they think it's going to sell more devices, right? It's like putting melatonin in a sleep supplement. Consumers expect it. You don't need it in there. It's probably more harmful to your sleep than helpful anyway, but consumers expect it. So, when you see that, hey, it also gives me sleep stages. This is kind of fun. Okay. So none of them you can do that. I mean, that's just not very good. Oura is a great thermometer. It's decent at heart rate, right? Decent at heart rate. I like the HRV aspect of Oura because they capture it at night. But you have to unpack HRV as a number because it's not exactly what you think it is, right? Even though you get a number, there's a lot of context to be had around that number. Whoop measures heart rate, middle of the road. They say they measure HRV in the deepest part of sleep. Let's just say they did heart rate well, which they don't. Let's say they do HRV well, which they can't. And let's say they could measure it at the deepest part of sleep. Even if that were true, measuring HRV in the deepest part of your sleep is not indicative of autonomic nervous system function. So essentially, it's just like Indiana Jones, they're digging in the wrong spot, right? So great. Even if you could do this right, you can't, you're measuring in the wrong spot. So that's a problem. So many issues with that product. Yeah. And then again, buy Magic 8-Ball. Fatigue Science, they'd have some pretty cool things. The problem with Fatigue Science, there's not a consumer available product. They deal with, Derek knows this. I think you and I are the only ones that still be wearing an RB4.
Yes.
They do, heavy industry like mining, they do military, and they do pro sports. That's their niche. They don't look at sleep staging. They look at sleep quantity, sleep quality. They have a safety model, which is gives you pretty good indicator of reaction time and cognitive impairment based upon your sleep. That was developed by the Department of Defense, and they've leveraged that technology. And then they also have what's called the fatigue avoidance scheduling tool. So teams can use it to actually plug in their travel. And you can see like, okay, at 7 p.m. to, or when we should leave, maybe on a flight, and we can look at what the team's performance is going to be if we leave at 8 o'clock at night versus 2 in the afternoon, right? So very cool stuff. Really high powered algorithms. But again, the consumer is not going to be able to get that.
Although weren't they licensing it to like Garmin or somebody, like the interface, and maybe
they are Fitbit
yeah.
actually, yeah. And then I think another wearable, another watch company as well. But again, now you're relying on that watch's ability to detect sleep, and then running the algorithms, the fatigue science algorithms in the background, right? So I don't know, right? It's like, all right, I got my Ferrari speedometer and I'm going to put it in my Honda Civic. Right. Right. I'm relying on, yeah. So,
but how are they measuring? How are they measuring though? It's not through heart rate. Is it just through motion?
Yeah. Actigraphy, which is, it has its limitations. But it's the best one on the market.
Is it going to be affected by anyone else moving in bed with you, or is it just you?
Potentially, because that person could disrupt your sleep. Right. I mean, if somebody moves around, I don't think, if I understand the question, if your wife or dogs are moving around, it's not going to make this move it will make you move, which will make that
Make
move.
this move. Right. I
Right.
get that.
So, but I think Aura, if I'm picking a consumer product, I'm going with Aura right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's got a nice form factor, gives me some interesting data in the middle of the night. Yeah. So I that's the one.
What
I'm
about the
going with.
stress factor too? I mean, I think a lot of people are wearing these devices now, and they're taking it a little overboard. Like they're starting to panic and develop this anxiety over it. I know when I did wear Whoop, I tried it years ago. You remember when I tried it?
Yeah.
Going to bed at night, I don't like wearing something on my wrist at night. It didn't feel right. If I swam in high school, so I was doing laps. It would never really stay on my wrist, but then I would get home and it would still be wet. I'd get out of the shower, it'd still be wet. It wouldn't feel comfortable. And I actually found a little bit of anxiety from wearing it at night. Like, do you find people are developing anxiety where that could be actually messing up their numbers even more?
Sure. Like, if you wake up and all of a sudden your HRV trend is typically around 85, made the number up. And now all of a sudden it's in the 60s and you can't unpack why that's happening. And you start freaking yourself out. Now it goes down to like a 58 and then it goes down to like a 55. That's probably because you're freaking out about it. And that little low level of stress in there is enough to throw it out of whack. But again, the HRV is a whole nother thing.
How can HRV be accurate if heart rate's not accurate?
It can't be, right? That's the thing. And it's looking at pulse rate. So it depends upon the wearable. And that's why I was like so crummy on Whoop. Or it does a decent job with heart rate. So it gives you a decent job at HRV. But you have to remember with HRV, the number in general is a dirty number. You drink water, it's going to throw off your heart rate. And the other thing that people forget about is that, they look at HRV and saying, well, it's either you're sympathetic or parasympathetic, and it shows you the difference. What we forget, what they don't teach you in physiology class, maybe that's why you never learned it, maybe it's not you're forgetting it, is that different parts of your body can be exhibiting sympathetic tone and parasympathetic tone. So for instance, if you eat lunch, right, and you had whatever, let's say we had the 1985 bodybuilder's lunch. I had chicken, broccoli, and sweet potato in a gallon of water. Okay. And then, and now what happens there is, obviously we know for rest and digest, I want to be parasympathetic so I can digest that food. But digestion requires an increase in blood flow. Not like I'm running laps blood flow, but regardless, there's an increase in blood flow. So what happens physiologically is parasympathetic activity to the heart is now suppressed. So I can make up for that increased need for increased blood need for digestion. So I have a showing of increase in sympathetic activity at the heart locally. It's not a global indication, but if you don't understand that, that can be misread and misinterpreted like anything else, right? So context is everything when it comes to data.
Yeah. The one question I had was, even if the validity and accuracy of these devices improve, do you think we're still short on the prescription side? So this is awareness tool. This is a monitoring tool. Do we provide the consumers with enough information on what to do with that data? Like, okay, what should I eat? How should I improve my sleep? Because I think that's what's lacking with a lot of these devices, is the prescription side and where to point people in the right way. And if we rely on professionals, that doesn't necessarily help the consumer if they don't have access to that professional.
Right. And so that's two different things, and that's up to the company. Do I want to be a wearable and a monitoring company, or do I want to be an intervention company, or do I want to be both? Right. So a lot of them it's just like a medical device company. Yeah, here's your cardiac arrhythmia. I make EKG machines. I'm not giving you the solution. I'm going to tell you what's wrong. Right. Or I'll give you the information so you can determine what's wrong. I'll portray the data for you so you can now make a determination of what's wrong. And then, But like you said, they don't have access to the devices there. So now you're forced to rely upon Google or professionals and influencers, whether they're good influencers or bad influencers, right? And that's a problem. So yeah, that's up to the company to determine there is a need for intervention. Some of them do that, right? Some of them start to provide a little bit of insight, like, blogs here and there. And they don't necessarily, they may give you some tips like on your screen, hey, try this, try that. But again, nothing very specific. It's going to be very general.
Yeah, is that for
generalized
liability
information.
reasons, you think, maybe?
Again, I don't think that's their business plan.
Yeah.
I don't think it's liability. I just think it's like, yeah, this might be, if we spend a little bit of dollars here to give them some information, maybe they'll buy our product. But but they don't want to go down that route. Go ahead.
What's the best way now? So someone's wearing different wearables and they're, confused. Where do they, which a lot of people are, where do they go about, how do they go about finding out the answers? How do they go about finding whether, are they getting enough REM? Are they getting enough deep sleep? Or are these devices causing too much anxiety and giving off false readings to where, it's making people worry about something maybe they should always worry about, but maybe they don't have to?
That's a fantastic question. Really, the only way of knowing what sleep cycle you're in is if you go to a sleep lab and you get what's called a polysomography, right? It's the gold standard for measuring sleep. Now, is it the gold standard because it's the best? No, it's the gold standard because it's the best that we have. Okay. It's been around for a long time and it hasn't really evolved much. So it's what we got. Right. So, that's really the only way of knowing how much sleep you get. And even then you're in a sleep lab with a bunch of stuff hooked up to your head and to your nose and to your fingers. And
in a different bed, in a different room,
bed, in a different place. Right. It's weird. So
there are some companies that do some portable that you can take home type setups, right?
There are, but even those setups are not going to have the granularity as like, a full blown EEG, right? Like the portable ones will give you, you have a microphone, so it'll get your respiration, and you'll have a cannula in there to match respiration. You'll have an SpO2 monitor on your finger and, a chest strap to measure respiration as well. So there's a lot of redundancy in those types of things.
How good are these pulse oximeters? I was going to ask you that because that's another thing that came out, right? Because there's one on my watch and I'm like 98%.
Well, I mean, the ones on your finger that you can pick up at the store, like Walgreens or whatever, CVS and whatever your Longs, the drugstore of choice, whatever, they're fine. The ones on your wrist, they need some more work. We're not quite there yet, or as we like to say, it's not quite commercially mature.
Seems like mostly everything on your wrist is just not there, is commercially immature. So.
Immature.
Yeah, but think about what companies are trying to do. The hope by these initial people in these startups is to do well enough in the market, put out a minimum viable product into the market, make a big splash so that some other big company like Google or whoever buys them up for a crap load of money. And then they can go and retire and with a golden parachute or have another startup and try and do it again, right? That's really all these people are trying to do. It's a business model. It's a business model.
But I think if they marketed it more towards how you presented it today, and I've never heard that. What do these wearables do? They measure behavioral change. Is that what you said?
Oh, they create behavioral change.
I'm sorry. Thank you. They create behavioral change. Mm-hmm. That to me seems very authentic. It seems very legitimate. Because again, getting back to the whole body fat analogy you gave me, I always say, if someone sucks at measuring body fat, just make sure you go back to that same person that sucks every time. It's like, you know what I'm saying? At least we'll have some consistency there at them just sucking.
Yes. Unless they get really good at you.
Yeah, exactly.
Why am I getting fatter?
Exactly.
But yeah, like it still gets me back to the Magic 8-Ball or the Two-Face character who would flip the coin to make a decision, right? Like, or the guy from No Country for Old Men. Like maybe that's just as good in a lot of cases, right? Because it forces you to make a decision and point you in a direction.
Well, I think that's the thing, right? What's good enough for your situation? right? Maybe for us in the military, plus or minus 30 minutes of sleep is good. Maybe that's all we need. Maybe that's close enough, right? So I think we have this thing is, you know, we need to be very, it's not 100% accurate. It's not going to be, right? I mean, it's not a calculator, right? So I think that's kind of the thing where we get caught up is like, again, it goes back to error budget. How much error are you comfortable accepting? That's all it comes down to. So wear whatever you want, right? You know, I use my Apple Watch. I have a Polar strap, an H10 that I can pair with it. Okay. I didn't use it today when I ran. I use my Apple Watch, and do I still look at it? Yeah. And I look at my heart rate recovery. All right. First minute, I was like minus 20 beats. The second minute, I was minus 40 beats, plus or minus whatever. But my thing is, do I see a big steep drop? That's where I'm just comfortable with. I didn't need to know the exact beat per minute. I just need a ballpark. Is it steep or is it flat? Okay, that's all. No.
And I would be interested in any sort of, like you said, irregular heartbeat that could be a sign of something bigger, to kind of alert me to that, to get a probably a more advanced test.
Yeah. And again, if you see these things like over time and say, geez, when people should go in for a yearly physical, it's important, right? Keep track of these and put them in notes in your phone. And when you go in and see your physician, say, hey, I know these things aren't perfect, but I notice that, I'm getting these irregular beat things. Is this anything to worry about? Are you worried about it? I am a little bit. Let's get you a test, right? Done. So I think that's kind of the other piece too, is I think maybe it makes people more aware. Hey, it says my sleep's really wacky. Now if this is REM, my REM's out of, I'm not getting enough REM. Am I okay? Hopefully the physicians are smart enough to say, yeah, I'm not too worried about that. So
does that scare you a bit that potentially people are not going to be making doctor visits and they're going to be, that's Apple's goal, isn't it? To handle physicals, to handle check-ins, or be able to measure specific vitals through wearables?
Well, people are already doing that anyway. They're Dr. Google, right? Like,
Right.
I think I have Japanese encephalitis, right? Or whatever it might be, right? So they self-diagnose themselves. They make appointments to the doctor, and it's like the book, The Death of Expertise, right? People are they're already doing that because they're kind of self-diagnosing things, and I think at the very least, it's making people aware of their health, or before they at least they're Googling something rather than not going, right? I don't know. Like, I think that's more of that's a question I would probably pose to a sociologist than somebody with my background, but because it's a societal thing, right? It's an interesting question. It's a fantastic question.
Well, I was just wanting your opinion. It doesn't have to be right. But listen, I'm not a doctor. I don't have a PhD. Right. It scares me. There are specific, when you go to your doctor, there are certain questions that doctor should be asking you that I feel like a watch isn't going to be able to ask you, or a certain conversation that you guys are going to have that a watch is not going to be able to have with you.
100%. And again, just like anything, just like, personal trainers, just like lawyers, just like housekeepers, just like baristas, physicians are the same way. There's some really good ones and there's some really crappy ones, right? Like, nothing annoys me more that I go into, I have my yearly physical and they're like, Brandon, your cholesterol is 200. So that's kind of, but just change your diet. You should be fine. You didn't even ask what I eat, right? I'm like 99% plant-based. I eat very little crap and my cholesterol is 200. Like, that's not we shouldn't be having this. We should have the next conversation.
Derek, this is a common issue, not only with what Brandon's discussing. I see it a lot with PTs. I have people reaching out to me online. I'm like, I'm not a PT. Why are you asking me this question? I went to a PT. They said, don't do anything overhead. What should I do? I'm like, why are you asking me? The PT told you not to do the overhead. And listen, I've had a half a dozen physical therapists work with me in the last 15 years. Charlie being obviously one of my closest friends. And if you're going to tell someone they can't do something, at least give them some type of like listen, I do not want you to do this because you're really messed up and we have to just give that shoulder a rest. Or you know what? We can't go overhead, but maybe we can maybe try carry. Tell me if there's any pain. These orthopedics, these chiropractors, these physical therapists want to turn around and tell people not to do something, but they don't want to at least give them someone to speak to. Don't do this. But you know what? It's not my expertise. Why don't you go speak to this individual? This is a physical therapist with a strength and conditioning background. Charlie should be able to determine what you can and can't do. They just want to say, don't do this. And honestly, I think it's a cop-out. If it's not your expertise, at least be a connector like you are. At least be able to give an avenue to explore.
Well, this is this kind of swings back to the beginning of the conversation with like a performance audit. And talking to teams like, we were trying to find someone to run our high performance system. What do you think about a physician? Like, why do you want a physician? Well, I mean, they know the human body. I mean, they obviously they're intelligent. Well, my question was this. I said, physicians don't understand performance. I said, I run 3.5 miles every other day. Okay. So I'm trying to improve my endurance capacity. So I make an appointment to see my cardiologist. And she walks in the room. She says, Brandon, why are you here? I said, well, I'm running. I want to improve my heart rate capacity, I want to improve my endurance. I don't do that. And they don't, right? And
she didn't give you a script for EPO?
Right. So, yeah. So, that's the thing. And that's what I told this general manager that. I said, and they're like, yeah, I guess you're right. They don't know performance. Like, they don't. It doesn't mean that person couldn't be successful, by no means, right? I've seen high performance systems with a physician, they've done really well. And I've seen them with a physician, they've done terrible. It's less about the degrees and that, it's more about the person. But my whole point is that they just don't know performance, right? So going back to what you said, they be a connector. I don't know that's not my world. I diagnose issues and treat issues of the heart and cardiovascular system, but I know a great personal trainer who can help you. And goes back to building the network, right? We've all talked about that in our talks, right? Building a trusted network.
Well, and that's why I like this kind of switch to virtual, because like you said, there's all these crappy influencers, but now I can connect with a professional like yourself or across the globe who get very good advice, and I could do it over Zoom, and I could show pictures and videos. And so I think there's some possibilities out there, in physical therapy and medicine, where we can get access to people and we can be more discerning consumers around all of this.
100%. No, there's some good that's come out of this global pandemic.
Well, I love it. Well, listen, that was an hour. I mean, I don't even know. I mean, I could honestly sat here and spoke to you for another hour. It's always great to get together with you, and looking forward to seeing you in person, hopefully at one of these summits when they eventually open back up. Totally. What do you have on the on the horizon right now? What's going on with work? Where can people find you?
So I don't have a big social media footprint. I have an Instagram, which I do more personal stuff and rant about people putting fruit on pizza. And then I have my Twitter account, which I use, which nobody else really uses, but I still post some stuff on there from time to time. And that's really it. What am I working on? Got a lot of different projects I'm working on. Most of my time right now, I'd say 90% of my time is in the military world, just solving some problems there that we're dealing with. So I've been, stuff with the Army Combat Fitness Test, working on some, was advising on a COVID project for the Army, developed a wearables vetting process for the Department of Defense. So we're going to do round 2 this year, right? To refine the process, guiding research for recovery and regeneration to the higher ups in the Pentagon, things like that. So a lot of higher level things, trying to make changes at a higher level. Like, I don't write programs for soldiers or things like war fighters or special operations guys. I'm kind of out of the program writing business now. I'm more into how can I affect the top and make some changes and do that.
Start calling you Dr. Wolfe from Pulp Fiction. What was it, Dr. Wolfe or Mr. Wolfe? You remember when
I think it was Mr. wasn't it?
it was Mr. Wolfe. So they brought in it was Harvey Keitel. Harvey Keitel pulled up in like the little sport car, and he like pretty much just did an overhaul of this, this debauchery. But like in a way, that's what you do. You are a problem solver. You're the person I would recommend if a major company's going through something, whatever it might be, like anything human resource related, we would bring you in, right?
Yeah, that's what I do. And then I have usually what I do when I talk to these groups, I'm like, I may need to bring in additional people to support it, like additional expertise to come in and give me insights. Right. And they're like, okay, whoever you need. Right. And then I just pull on my different network and, who might be good for this, who could come in here and give me another set of fresh eyes and whatnot. So
very interesting. Well, Brandon, your Twitter handle, your Instagram handle, if you don't mind.
B Marcello 13 or B Marcello 13, however you like to pronounce it. All works for me.
And Derek and I both follow him, so you can go to our handles and check that out.
There you go.
Brandon, you're one of my favorite people that we bring on. You're just so awesome to talk to. Derek agrees as well. Can't wait till we can hang out in person, man.
Yeah.
Give my fellow Paisan a big hug, a non-COVID hug.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Appreciate it, guys.
Us Italians are very emotional. We hug.
We do hug, and we like to eat.
We like to eat. Yes, we do. Speaking of,
I'm Scandinavian. I'm the opposite. Yeah.
You are Canadian.
Yeah, that too.
Love you, Derek. You're the best. All right, boys. Thanks again for this. This is great.
Thank you, Brandon.
Take care.
Take care.